Loy is the weakest teenager in the village. He can't even catch a single rabbit. On top of that, he got beaten up by it without landing a hit, which made Loy feel really embarrassed. Right then, the neighbor suddenly appeared holding that damn rabbit. Loy was overjoyed on the way back, constantly asking Soma what the outside world was like, but he didn't answer, and told Loy to become strong first and find the answers himself. Then Soma gave him a book which the kid really liked. Sometime later, Loy matured and set off to find the Western Wizard. When he arrived, Magi warned anyone not mentally prepared to pay the price to quickly leave by hitting the exit button. Master Loy didn't leave, so Magi warned anyone not mentally prepared to pay the price to quickly leave by hitting the exit button. Master Loy didn't leave, so Magi stood up and asked why he was so desperate. Loy confessed he wanted to become a soldier, so he traveled to the city hoping for Magi's favor. Magi was about to tell him the history of the wizards, but Loy already knew the overview. Magi got so embarrassed she got angry, scolded Loy, then told him to find somewhere else to stay. But when she heard Loy say he came from Kanjan village and the village chief was AK, Magi suddenly got goosebumps when Loy took out a crystal ball, and Magi got even more terrified because she had to meet her terrifying master again. Magi cowered before AK's appearance, losing all pride. Since Loy was AK's favorite, she decided to entrust him to Magi's care. AK pretended that the image was just a pre-recorded playback to let Magi reveal her true nature as she attacked her master repeatedly. When she realized she had been tricked by Old Lady Lolly, Magi anxiously apologized to AK. As soon as she left, Magi immediately vented her anger on the crystal ball. Seeing this, Loy apologized to Magi, but surprisingly, this badass not only didn't blame him, but even let Loy use her room. The two just got along like that, heh heh heh. Before going inside, Loy didn't forget to thank and ask Magi for help, making her see he was a very kind person. Just when things were peaceful, AK suddenly appeared, reminding Magi not to bully Loy, or else don't ask why the sea is salty. AK said she just teleported here through the crystal ball, which made Magi extremely uncomfortable. AK didn't care and told Magi to train Loy seriously. AK still held a grudge because Magi kept calling her Old Lady Lolly, so she would curse her favorite student with misfortune. After finishing, Magi met a string of bad luck that made this badass curse loudly over there, truly the most miserable witch in the world. The next morning, Magi woke up to find Loy diligently cooking. He apologized for using the stove without permission, but Magi told him to make himself at home. Then, the young man brought out a double-layered cake with rich sauce to invite Magi to try. Just one bite, and Magi had to praise how delicious it was, making Loy very happy. When Magi asked about his desire to become a soldier, Loy suddenly apologized for being the weakest in the village. Even gathering firewood and catching fish were things he couldn't do. Since childhood, Loy admired a hero from a novel, and that was why he longed to become a soldier. To enter the officer school, he had to pass martial arts magic exams and a direct interview. Magi said the martial arts test was the most important, which made Loy embarrassed since he didn't have confidence in his physical strength because it took him 6 whole days to get here. Magi said it was normal to take 6 days by train from Kanjan village, but what was unusual was that Loy ran here on foot, ma'am. Magi said that was really fast. Then Loy claimed his grandfather only took 2 days to get here. Magi wondered if Loy had encountered monsters, but he said no creatures showed up, only a few animals like giant grasshoppers and fire-breathing lizards. Magi said those were monsters, grandchild, but Loy still insisted they were just normal animals. Only a demon lord was worthy of being called a monster by Loy, which gave Magi a headache and made her beg, "Please tone down this general's power for me." Magi said even novels wouldn't dare write a male lead like that, making the young man feel touched, thinking Magi was trying to comfort him. After Loy stroked her cheek, Magi's skin seemed purified, becoming as smooth as velvet. Whether Loy encountered any monsters or not, he said no creature made a sound, only a few animals like giant grasshoppers and fire-spitting lizards. That's it. Magi said those were monsters, my dear, but Loy still considered them just normal animals. Only something on the scale of a demon lord would Loy call a monster, which gave Magi a headache and made him ask to weaken this general for him. Magi said novels wouldn't even dare to write a male lead like that, making the young man feel touched, as if Magi was trying to comfort him. After Loy stroked Magi's cheek, Magi's skin seemed purified, becoming soft as velvet. Loy said he had written an ancient worm spell on this cloth that could remove all stubborn stains. Magi fell into despair, feeling useless because it took her 3 whole years to learn that worm spell. Loy said he also knew how to cast rain magic, but Magi declared that spell useless. She helplessly said that tomorrow both of them would start learning normal magic, which made Loy very excited. The next day, Loy was out sightseeing when he heard people talking about many candidates taking the officer school entrance exam. Tomorrow, both will start learning basic magic, which excites Loy a lot. The next day, Loy was out sightseeing when he overheard people talking about many candidates gathering for the Officer Academy exam, all concentrated here. Besides that, they also heard that foreign agents were luring monsters into the city. Loy heard the word monsters and suddenly remembered the mission he had to do, so he ran off immediately. Meanwhile, the princess accidentally bumped into a man and was recognized by him. This guy kept insulting the princess because she had lowered the reputation of the local nobility. Despite that, the princess ignored him and walked into a nearby alley. Unfortunately, she ran into a monster and was thrown against the wall. Just as the princess was about to be finished off, Loi suddenly appeared like a god and defeated the monster. The young man casually tossed the monster away and approached the princess to check on her, but because she felt insecure about her appearance, she avoided Loi's concern. He said he still had work to do, so they had to part ways here. Hearing this, the princess avoided Loi's attention, and he said he still had work to do, so they had to say goodbye here. Hearing this, the princess introduced herself as Celine and watched Loi leave. Even after returning home, Celine's mind was still on Loi. Celine planned to do her makeup beautifully next time, but looking at the belt on her face reminded her of her unhappy childhood. Since she was little, Celine was bullied by those around her, making her utterly hopeless. Because of this, her parents sought help from a priest who said that someday a strong enough person would break Celine's curse. Since then, Celine has been training hard, but luck has never smiled on her. Celine wishes this belt would disappear forever, and in a fit of anger, she dared to remove it. Unexpectedly, it came off, easily making Celine realize that Loi was the person the priest once mentioned. After all these years of suffering, Celine finally found her destined one. Meanwhile, Loi brought back all the food Maisie requested and even used the leftover money to buy a gift for Maisie, who was really happy. Jolie noticed that the number of candidates that Methohan recruited was very large. Due to worsening diplomacy with neighboring countries and the Queen's disappearance, their army needed to strengthen forces to protect peace. Jolene paid attention to Jiho, a female mercenary, who was wanted for attacking her master's favored one just because she disliked them. Methohan said her true nature was that of a mercenary, so once Jiho joined the army, the warrant would be dropped. Suddenly, the two saw Alan from afar, whispering about something. The princess, the belt, and Alan scolded Celine for not removing the belt sooner, saying it had damaged his reputation. Metho. Han knew Alan valued honor highly because when recruited, he said he would enlist immediately if made an officer. Jiho saw many people looking for opportunities to exploit and planned to find a way to escape, but she suddenly got scared seeing Loi appear with his badass hockey. Terrified, Loi suddenly complimented Jiho's arm, which made her overthink. She panicked, thinking Loi had her figured out, and got even more nervous as Loi greeted her. Then out of nowhere, a jerk charged in and shoved Jiho into the chicken coop immediately. Taking advantage, Jiho tried to sneak away but was caught by Celine. Loi explained that was Jiho and that they had just met. The jerk finally left her alone when he saw Celine smelled like money and could be exploited. Jiho then started plotting something. Soon the martial arts part began, and the referee announced everyone could freely choose weapons to strike the target. Jiho went to talk to Methohan, making him think she was scared and about to quit, but after having her wrongdoing erased and receiving payment, Jiho wasn't about to miss this rare opportunity. Jiho wondered what kind of power Loi possessed to be so OP, but even Methohan didn't know because Loi applied himself. Methohan knew that even if everyone here teamed up, they couldn't defeat Loi. It was time for Jiho to enter the arena. At that moment, Loi was preparing to start his round. Methohan watched him but was called away by a colleague, so he could only hope Loi would pass smoothly. Meanwhile, Mozzie was snacking and drinking tea, waiting for Loi's results to be announced when the master suddenly appeared. Mozzie knew that although Loi, wondering what kind of power Loi has to be this OP, but even Methohan doesn't know because Loi applied by himself. Methohan knows that even if everyone here combined forces, they couldn't beat Loi. It's time for Jiho to be called to the arena, and right now Loi is preparing to start his part in the exam. Jiho was observing him, but got called away by a colleague, so all he could do was hope Loi would pass smoothly. While Maisie was sipping tea and waiting for Loi's results, the master suddenly arrived. Watching you, but then a colleague called me away, so I can only hope Loi will successfully get through it while Mozzie is sipping tea, eating cake and waiting for Loi's results to be announced when the master suddenly showed up. Mozzie knows that although Loi always says he's weak, the truth is otherwise because Loi was born and raised in the legendary Kanzone village where heroes were made, and you can't just fail. Meanwhile, Loi is checking the competition results, but no matter how many times he reads, he can't find his name anywhere. The next day, Jiho and Celine keep looking for Loi, but can't find him anywhere, not even Metho. The next day, Jiho and Celine kept searching for Loi's trace, but still couldn't find him anywhere. Even Metho. Han was frantically searching for Loi's name on the list so much that he forgot his usual dignified demeanor. The clueless young man casually said AI wasn't present and told him to raise his hand only to get smacked by colleagues for talking nonsense. Jolie announced that the Azami Kingdom and Zio Empire are currently in conflict and could go to war at any moment. Metho, Han muttered, without Loi, this country is doomed. Jiho and Celine were about to turn into beasts. With Loy absent, Jolene continued recounting the disappearance of the Azami princess, but the trio still only cared about Loy. Jolene declared that whoever finds the princess will be rewarded with anything from wealth to status. After seeing the results, Loy sadly went home. He knew he didn't do well in both the martial arts and written tests, but he wouldn't accept it. While Loy was reading ads by the roadside, the monster from earlier came looking for trouble, but with just a flick of his hand, Loy sent it straight to the afterlife. Following directions, Loy arrived at the eatery, but suddenly an older man charged at him. Loy easily dodged, leaving the man extremely surprised. Even more shocked to see Loy's limitless hidden power, the man wondered if Loy came here to gather information about the kingdom through a former royal guard like him. Unexpectedly, Loy was here, because he saw a job posting for part-time work, but the man didn't believe it. The uncle asked about Loy's skills, and he confidently said he could cook and clean, causing the man to fall victim to the 2 boats trick and get stuck with hardened glue. Loy declared if there was anyone better than him, they didn't exist, which caused the uncle even more psychological trauma. Loy said if the man didn't believe him, just let him start working, and the man thought they would fight each other. While cooking, Loy confided that he had just failed the officer school entrance exam, but the uncle acted like he was lying because everyone in the village had enthusiastically sent him off. Loy didn't want to return as a failure, so he decided to stay here a while longer and try again next year. The uncle began to believe Loy was an ordinary person, but still remained cautious, remembering how he moved. Meanwhile, Metho Han was looking at Loy's test and discovered the boy had just been doodling dragons and snakes on the paper. Metho Han got scolded by a younger colleague for wasting time gossiping with girls instead of working. Celine told Jolene that Loy was a talent just unable to control his urge to paint during the test. As soon as she saw Loy's paper, Jolene realized what everyone thought was scribbles were actually ancient runic texts. Metho Han's ignorance got him smacked hard by her. Jolene asked where Loy was now, but no one knew. Currently, Loy had finished making tomato fish sauce, but the uncle didn't dare eat, fearing a trap. But being a former veteran commander, this old man accepted the challenge. First, Jolene had to enlighten everyone about ancient runic texts. Depending on vocabulary skill and magic power, you could create things no other magic could. A few minutes ago, Metho Han had talked to the officer in charge of interviewing Loy, learning that Loy said he could only use rain summoning magic. Jiho didn't believe it, thinking that anyone who could use ancient runic texts could easily summon rain. After finishing the fish sauce, the uncle had to admit Loy's cooking skills were top tier. Finally, he believed Loy really came here to apply for work and introduced himself as Chrome. But Loy remained a mystery, so he still watched his every move carefully. Jolene regretted missing Loy because otherwise she could have seen more ancient runic texts. Celine said she would go find the princess and get Loy a slot at the officer school. That night, Loy returned to tell Maisie about failing the test, which made AK furious enough to want to destroy the entire kingdom. Loy said he would try again next year, so AK wanted Loy to come back to the village so she could take care of him, but Loy wanted to stay. Being a former veteran leader, this old man would accept the challenge. First, Jolene had to enlighten everyone about ancient rune scripts. Depending on vocabulary skill and magic power, they could create things no magic could. A few minutes ago, Metho Han talked privately with the officer interviewing Loy and learned Loy claimed he only used rain-calling magic. Jiho didn't believe it, thinking those who mastered ancient rune scripts could easily call rain. After finishing the fish sauce dish, the uncle had to admit Loy's skills were top-notch. Finally, he believed Loy really came here to apply and introduced himself as Chrome, but Loy was still a mystery, so he had to watch his every move carefully. Jolene regretted missing Loy. Otherwise, she could have seen more ancient rune scripts. Celine said she would find the princess to get Loy a slot at the officer school. That night, Loy returned to tell Maisie he failed the exam, making AK furious and wanting to destroy the entire kingdom. Loy said he would try again next year, so AK wanted him to go back to the village for her to take care of him, but Loy wanted to stay here and promised to pay full rent to Maisie. Seeing Loy so determined, AK had no choice but to agree. Loy happily thanked them both, and immediately, otherwise she would have seen more ancient rune scripts. Celine said she would find the princess and ask for a slot for Loy in the officer academy. That night, Loy returned to tell Maisie he failed the exam, making AK furious, wanting to destroy the entire kingdom. Loy said he would try again next year, so AK wanted him to go back to the village so she could take care of him, but Loy wanted to stay here and promised to pay the rent fully to Maisie. Seeing Loy was so determined, AK had no choice but to agree. Loy happily thanked them both, then immediately went to prepare dinner. AK planned to create another room here and even buy a double bed so that she could stay with Loy. Maisie said if the master has free time, he should save this kingdom. The thing is, 5 years ago, King Azami suddenly became obsessed with war. Maisie believes someone is manipulating the kingdom behind the scenes. Azami suddenly became a war-hungry man. Maisie believes someone is pulling the strings behind the king, and he will use the kingdom's founding anniversary to declare war. This year's festival will have diplomatic delegations and leaders from various countries attending, making it the perfect moment. Maisie is determined not to let this happen, but AK is different. She and John's village only act when the Demon King or large-scale disasters appear that humans can't handle. As for fights, AK isn't interested in getting involved with Magi. Knowing this 5 years ago, they came to AK to learn the run script. Recently, Maisie went to the central area to investigate, and she needs to expose the mastermind as soon as possible. AK warns her student not to rush and not to drag Loi into this. She asks Maisie to handle that issue quickly, then find a way to help Loi enroll in the officer school. Maisie doesn't understand why AK wants Loi to become a soldier, so AK reveals that Loi must fulfill a great wish. As AK disappears, Maisie smirks and casts a moderate curse of misfortune on her beloved student. Right after saying it, Maisie suffers a terrible cramp, carrying a grudge. That night, Maisie threw a crystal ball into the well. Jiho tells Mitho Han to let Celine handle Loi's matters. While they focus on searching for the lost princess to help Loi enroll, Mitho Han knows they desperately need Loi's power because war will break out soon. Suddenly, he's surprised that today this place is busier than usual, even though the food here is both abundant and cheap, as if given away but tastes like getting punched in the face. Even the floor cleaning is sloppy. Yet today it's so shiny you can see your reflection. Mitho Han also reveals to Jiho that the shop owner used to be a captain serving Princess Chrome. They quickly serve dishes for both, and the absolutely cinematic flavors keep them praising non-stop. Chrome says she just hired a new soldier, but Mitho Han grumbles. He doesn't understand why anyone would want to work in such a terrible place. Suddenly, Loi brings out food, shocking them both. They never expected the person they searched for across the horizon to be right in front of them. Mitho Han hurriedly finishes his rice, then asks Chrome why Loi is here. The uncle thinks Mitho Han must know Loi, but he actually knows nothing about him. Chrome senses Loi is very strong and is always on edge, wondering when he'll take action. More importantly, Chrome wonders why the Adi army let such a significant figure like Loi slip away. While throwing out the trash, Loi runs into a monster, but to him, it's just a harmless creature. The young man gently tosses it away, then thinks about how to handle the large pile of garbage. On his way to find the incinerator, Loi accidentally sees Maisie enter an alley. At the same time, two soldiers talk about the monster's appearance and enter there, so Loi decides to follow them. At the officer school, the rival duo meets and clashes because the little thief claimed he saw Loi, so Celine followed him. Unexpectedly, he lied, so the big sister taught him a lesson he won't forget. Alan criticizes Celine for damaging the local noble's reputation. Seeing Celine still stubborn, Alan takes out his weapon to teach her a lesson. Celine also draws her sword, ready to face anyone blocking her path to find her future husband, but Alan's speed is too fast for her to dodge at first. Luckily, Celine's belt counterattacks in time to save her life. This badass thinks this is the power of love Loi has for her, leaving everyone speechless. While Celine is deluded that the belt is a red string of fate, Loi's love flag appears, making her joy like a harvest. Jolene sees the chaotic crowd and rushes over to remind Alan not to fight in Chrome's group. Just in time, she sees Loi is also here proudly. Celine says Loi fought Alan to protect her, so Mitho Han comes to scold him, but Alan clarifies that he maintained soldiers' discipline and never attacked civilians. Mitho managed to counterattack and save her life. This brat thought it was the power of the love Loi had for her that left everyone speechless. Celine was fantasizing that the belt was a red thread of fate, but Loi's banner appeared, making her as happy as a bumper harvest. Jolene saw the crowd getting chaotic, so she ran over to warn Alan not to fight Chrome's group. By chance, Loi was also there. Celine proudly said Loi fought Alan to protect her, so Mitho Han went to interrogate him. Alan clarified he kept his military discipline and didn't lay a hand on civilians. The flag appeared, making the kid as happy as a bumper harvest. Jolene saw the crowd getting rowdy and ran over to warn Alan not to fight Chrome's group. Just then, Loi was also here. Celine proudly said Loi fought Alan to protect her, so Mitho Han came to confront him, but Alan clarified that he still follows the military code and never harms civilians. Mitho. Han suddenly shouted at Alan that he must properly punish that guy to be a real soldier. Jolene told Mitho Han to stop talking nonsense. Then she revealed Loi is the one who wrote the run script, hearing that Jolene ordered Alan and Loi to fight together. Alan realized the two colonels wanted to test Loi's strength and asked Loi to duel him. Loi said he's weak, but Alan still wanted to try, so the guy had no choice but to agree. Jiho thought Alan would finish him with one move, but Alan still wanted to try, so the young man had no choice but to agree. Jiho thought Alan would be defeated with just one move, but Mitho Han says he's actually pretty impressive. Alan tells Loi to punch him hard in the face, making Mitho Han nod in respect for this guy. Just as Loi is about to strike, the group rushes to stop him, fearing Alan might say goodbye forever after taking the hit. Right, that punch suddenly brought a strange wind, and Magi carried Loi away in front of everyone. After landing safely, Magi scolds Loi for being reckless enough to challenge her. Loi quickly apologizes to Magi and is deeply moved because she just saved his life. The young man promises to do anything to repay her, which delights Magi. Still, she keeps some pride and warns Loi not to say that, or bad people like her might take advantage. Loi trusts Magi as a good person, which completely melts her heart with his unmatched cuteness. The two are chatting when Chrome arrives to call Loi back to help watch the restaurant. As he drags him away, Chrome respectfully bows to Magi. She wonders why Chrome is here, and he says he left the military after failing a mission to protect the princess. Since then, Chrome has been hiding under the restaurant owner's name while continuing to investigate the princess's whereabouts and the king's sudden change. Magi says everything will soon come to an end because on the third day of the festival, the mastermind plans to declare war in the king's name. However, Magi still doesn't know the identity of the person behind it and wants Chrome to investigate further. Seeing Mitho Han still refusing to leave Jolene makes him a cup of coffee. She doesn't understand why Mitho Han is so driven, but it turns out he was born into poverty and had his entire food supply raided by the Zio army gang. Since then, Mitho Han has never forgotten that hatred and swore it would never happen again. Selen is feeling rich because she didn't meet her crush yesterday, so Jiho tells her she can do it anytime she wants. The real issue now is finding the princess, or Loi's admission to the academy will just remain a hopeless dream. The two then head to the famous information shop run by the wizard Magi to search for the princess's whereabouts, only to run into Loi. They're leading Celine to imagine dozens of scenarios. Between him and Magi, Jiho realizes Loi and this girl are nothing special, but Celine insists they are each other's destiny. Jiho guesses Loi broke the seal on the belt, which is why Celine is so delusional. Not knowing what to do, Magi suddenly returns and flops down as if nothing happened. When she realizes there's a guest at the house, Magi is jolted awake by Celine's killer glare. Loi introduces them as his friends who came to buy information from Magi. Jiho asks Magi to help find the person in the photo, but she refuses to exchange info about the missing princess, even though Jiho never mentioned the person was the princess. This makes Magi nervous. Magi's attitude seems strange to Jiho, and importantly, she looks quite similar to that person. When Celine learns Magi has lived here for 2 years, she is heartbroken and tears up, seriously wanting to ask Magi, something that makes Magi uneasy. So she admits she is the princess, while Celine only wants to ask if Magi is Loi's wife. Jiho is speechless, not expecting Magi to be the important person they've been searching for all along. Hearing that Magi quickly explains they are just like relatives, Celine is so relieved she almost drops her guard. Jiho points out that Magi just said she's the princess, but changed the subject. After clearing the confusion, Celine returns to the main topic and pleads with Magi to help find information about the princess so Loi can get into the officer academy. Magi wants both sides to exchange information like updates on the king or army movements, but before discussing that, Jiho keeps pressing Magi. All this time, hearing that Magi quickly explained they were only like relatives, Celine was so happy she dropped a bullet. Jiho pointed out that Magi just called herself a princess but changed the subject. After clearing up the confusion, Celine returned to the main topic, urgently pleading with Magi to help find information about the princess to help Loi enter the officer school. Magi wanted both sides to exchange information like details about the king or the army's movements, but before discussing that, Jiho kept pressing Magi until she had to admit her identity. Just as Magi was about to speak, Loi suddenly appeared, saying he had long recognized her as the savior because she once used wind magic to save him and secretly defeated monsters to protect everyone. Loi also knew this kingdom was in danger, so he begged Magi to let him fight alongside her, like grabbing a lifeline, even pretending to acknowledge her as the savior. However, she felt Loi wasn't skilled enough to follow her. Loi tried to explain and begged Magi to give him a chance, but she still refused, thinking he'd only be a burden. Feeling he had asked too much, he apologized and ran straight into his room. Just as Loi left, Magi suddenly proposed cooperation with Jiho and Celine, wanting to find and eliminate the mastermind behind the plot. Magi laughed as she told them about Loi's origin from Kanjan village, helping Jiho understand where that young man's power came from. There was an unspoken rule there, absolutely no involvement in human internal affairs. That was why Magi was cold to Loi. Otherwise, he'd be sent back to the village and couldn't pursue his dreams. Magi knew many were hunting the princess, and whether she lived or died was accepted. Magi was sure the one pulling the strings of the king had issued this order because he wanted to use her as a symbol for the anti-war faction. So Magi couldn't act alone and had to rely on Jiho and Celine's help. Both understood Magi's situation and agreed to cooperate. That night, Loi kept thinking about Magi's words and began doubting his ability to become a strong soldier. Magi, worried about the country's future, couldn't sleep and was contemplating rescuing her father using run script when AK suddenly appeared. She knew Magi had kept her promise not to let Loi get involved, but Magi throwing the glass orb into the well upset AK greatly. So she decided to curse her beloved junior brother for every 10 words he spoke. Magi would have to meow. Besides, AK had already planned a date with Loi on the day of the founding festival, so Magi didn't need to worry about him. Magi was shocked to hear her master abandon her at such a critical moment. In the following days, Jiho and Celine searched together for the trustee's whereabouts. Though his identity was unknown, they overheard him always saying everything was for the country's peace. Soon it was the day AK and Loi went to the festival, but Loi was in no mood because he still felt guilty for not being able to help the country. Seeing Loi's gloomy look, AK felt strangely restless inside. To cheer him up, AK took his hand and played all the games there. Unfortunately, this trick didn't work well, so AK had to try another plan. She pulled out some chocolate and aimed it at Loi's banana to do something when suddenly a monster appeared, causing chaos everywhere. Meanwhile, Chrome was meeting the king to request his military rank reinstated. The king did not respond, so Methohan told Chrome to return and wait for news. After this, Chrome stopped pretending and started revealing the truth to Methohan not long ago. He secretly hunted down the mastermind who cursed his majesty and sparked war with Geo. Based on information from the trustees, Chrome realized something very important about the one always claiming it was all for peace, none other than Methohan himself. So he was sure Methohan was the puppeteer behind it all. Methohan saw the king as a useless puppet letting the Zio Empire run rampant, so he turned him into a puppet to do more useful things. At this moment, Jiho's group arrived with Magi and revealed her true identity. Upon hearing his daughter had returned, the king suddenly turned and smiled savagely. Methohan was boasting his achievements when the king unexpectedly struck him down. The old man claimed he was never controlled by Methohan, but only pretended so Methohan would unseal him. In truth, the king was the one who attacked Methohan's village and humankind, thought he was a pawn, but he was just a grain of rice. Methohan was used by the king to fuel his hatred of the royal family and help start the war. Then he turned Methohan into a monster and escaped during the chaos. Jiho risked herself to block Methohan, helping Magi chase after the fake king. She quickly found the butcher and decided to fight to reclaim her father's body. Just as Magi prepared the finishing blow, the old fox used the king's voice to make her lower her guard and severely wounded her. He advanced. Insert pain point. This is every bullied kid's dream. Insert algorithm hook. Wait until you see what happens next. Loi's mood made AK feel something strange inside. To cheer him up, AK took Loi's hand to play all the games here. Unfortunately, this trick didn't work well, so AK had to try another plan. She took out some chocolate and aimed for Loi's banana to do something when suddenly monsters appeared, causing chaos everywhere. Meanwhile, Chrome was meeting the king to ask for the restoration of his military rank. The king didn't respond, so Methohan told Chrome to go back and receive news. After this, Chrome stopped pretending and began revealing the truth to Methohan. Not long ago, he secretly searched for the mastermind who cursed his majesty and sparked war with Geo. Based on information gathered from the entrusted men, Chrome realized a very important fact. The one who always claimed everything was for peace was none other than Methohan. So he was sure Methohan was the puppet master behind it all. Methohan believed the king was a useless puppet, while the Zio Empire rampaged freely, so he turned the king into a puppet to do more useful things. At this moment, Jiho's group arrived with Magi and revealed her true identity. Upon hearing his daughter had returned, the king suddenly turned around and laughed savagely. Methohan was boasting about his achievements, but was suddenly struck away by the king. The old man said he wasn't manipulated by Methohan, but pretended so Methohan would break his seal. In truth, the one who attacked Methohan's village and humanity was the king himself. Thought he was a chicken, but he was just a grain of rice. Methohan was used by the king to make him hate the royal family and help start the war. Then he turned Methohan into a monster and escaped in the chaos. Jiho risked herself to block Methohan's path, helping Magi chase the fake king. She quickly found the butcher and vowed to fight him to reclaim her father's body. Just as Magi was about to finish him off, the old fox used the king's voice to distract her, causing her to be severely wounded. He approached, dragged Magi up, and threatened to kill her here. Thinking she still owed Loi an apology, Magi was determined not to let that happen. She struggled to stand and confront him, but the bastard suddenly roared and declared he would rule this world because he was the strongest. The giant magic circle AK created revealed that these monsters were minions of the Demon King, and whenever it involved him, AK couldn't just stand by. More importantly, they ruined her date with Loi, so they had to be punished severely. Meanwhile, both Chrome and Ziho were no match for Methohan, so Celine had to ask Loi for help by using herself as bait because she believed the hero would show up at the moment the heroine was in danger. This guy kept provoking Methohan to attack, but the belt on her waist blocked all his attacks. Celine wasn't satisfied because that way the girl wouldn't. After learning the fake king was actually the demon lord, Loi got furious for not knowing sooner. If they had known earlier, Magi and Loi wouldn't have wasted time arguing, and he would have had the right to join since the opponent was the Demon Lord. Furious for not knowing this earlier, if so, they wouldn't have argued uselessly, and he would have had the right to join this mission since the foe was the Demon Lord. When the old man tried to strike again, Magi immediately rushed off to find reinforcements. On the way to the palace, Loi knocked away a monster, and that accidental action saved Alan's life. Alan sheepishly admitted he was running away because they were too terrifying. Loi understood his feelings, but the soldier he admired always pushed forward, no matter the opponent. Loi confided about failing the exam, but always wanting to contribute some strength to this country. Just as they were touched, another monster appeared, so Loi sent it off to the afterlife. Alan told Loi not to brag, since he just punched the AI monster away. In Loi's eyes, it was just a harmless bug. Alan was encouraged to become stronger and quickly left. While heading back, Alan suddenly heard a cry for help and recalled Loi's encouragement, as if he was given extra power to easily defeat the monsters. Looking up at the sky, Alan was utterly shocked to see the giant magic circle AK created. She had discovered these monsters were minions of the Demon Lord, and whenever it involved him, AK couldn't just stand by. More importantly, they had ruined her date with Loi, so she had to punish them severely. Meanwhile, both Chrome and Ziho were no match for Methohan, so Selene had to ask Loi for help by using herself as bait, believing a hero would appear the moment the heroine was in danger. At this time, she kept provoking Methohan to attack, but the belt she wore blocked all his strikes. Selene was unhappy because that way she wouldn't fall into Loi's loving arms. Jiho didn't care and ordered Selene to keep holding Methohan back so she could find Loi. Just as Jiho ran out, Loi had already arrived, making Selene very happy. However, the plan to dump her into Loi's arms failed because he was only focused on Chrome's safety. After grasping the situation, Loi asked Methohan what he planned next. Methohan responded with attacks, but they were like eggs hitting rocks. Loi began using brainwashing techniques, saying soldiers are heroes protecting life and peace for the country. He reminded Methohan to remember the noble ideals he once pursued, making him gradually regain his reason. Methohan said it was all for a peaceful future without war, only filled with the smiles of the people. Just as they were moved, the little guy suddenly made a cold comment scolding Methohan for drinking too much and turning into a rambling junkie who didn't resemble a soldier at all. Everyone was shocked to hear Loi's words. Even Methohan, falsely accused by Loi, went crazy again, causing the plan to fail miserably. Methohan lunged at Loi, but was headbutted into the wall and knocked out. Loi was about to run to find Magi when she suddenly rushed in, apologizing for coming uninvited. Unexpectedly, Magi happily welcomed him. The Demon Lord also happened to be present. Loi thought he was just a common drunk like Methohan, which was why he disguised himself as a king. Marie bragged about just defeating the final boss in front of everyone. She joined Loi in mocking the old man, saying he was drunk and smelling strongly of alcohol. Therefore, Magi wanted Loi to use ancient texts to cleanse all the filth off the old man. The giant magic array AK created revealed these monsters are under the Demon King's command, so AK can't just stand by. More importantly, they ruined her date with Loi, so they deserve punishment. Meanwhile, neither Chrome nor Ziho is a match for Methohan. So Selene had to ask Loi for help by using herself as bait because she believes the hero will appear when the heroine is in danger. The girl kept provoking Methohan to attack, but her belt, she and Loi must punish harder. Meanwhile, neither Chrome nor Ziho is a match for Methohan. So Selene has to rely on Loi's help by using herself as bait because she believes the hero will appear. At the moment the heroine is in danger, she keeps provoking Methohan to attack, but the belt on her waist, she has blocked every strike from him. Selene is dissatisfied because this way she won't fall into Loi's tender embrace. Jiho doesn't care and orders Selene to keep blocking Metho. Hanso, she can go find Loi. Just as Jiho runs out, Loi has already arrived, making Selene extremely happy. However, the plan to fall into his arms, everyone knows there are 3 main ways to use magic chanting spells: drawing patterns or seals and writing incantations. Also using magic stones or staffs as mediums. After the theory lesson, Jolene brings out magic-resistant dummies for practice. Selene and Jiho are both fire users, impressing Jolene a bit. Failed because Loi only cared about Chrome's safety. After grasping the situation, Loi immediately asked Metho Han what he planned to do next. Han responded with attacks, but they were like hitting eggs with stones. Loi began using mental manipulation. Chi techniques saying soldiers are heroes who protect life and peace. For the country, reminding Han to remember the noble ideals he once pursued, which gradually helped him regain his reason. Mother Thuhan said it was all for a peaceful future without war, only filled with the smiles of the people. Just as they were moved, the kid snapped back coldly, scolding Thohan for drinking too much and acting like a drugged fool, talking nonsense that didn't fit a soldier at all. Everyone heard Loi's words and got psychologically shaken. Even Thohan, wrongly accused by Loi, went crazy again, causing the plan to fail miserably. Mother Thuhan lunged toward Loi, but got rammed and knocked unconscious by him. Loi was about to run find Magi when she suddenly pushed the door open and rushed in apologizing for coming unannounced. Unexpectedly, Magi was delighted to see him. The Demon King was also present, but Loi mistook him for a common drunk, like Mi Thohan, which was why he disguised himself as a king. Marie bragged about just defeating the final boss to everyone. She joined Loi in mocking the old man, saying he was drunk and clinging to her with a strong scent of alcohol. Because of this, Mazi wanted Loi to use the ancient script to cleanse all the foul smells off the Demon King. The Demon King resisted, but it was insignificant, so Loi purified him and he gradually vanished. Loi teared up while healing Mazi's wounds, and they both cleared up their misunderstandings. Selen had no status, so even though she was furious, she couldn't do anything to Mazi. Despite everything that happened, luckily the founding festival ended smoothly. While walking, Loi happened to meet his longtime sworn brother. He said he was transferring goods here and congratulated Loi on defeating the Demon King. At that moment, AK ran. Maisie asked Loi to take out and extinguish his conspiracy. Maisie guessed this thing was just fake merchandise, so priority was given to exposing the sword's truth as soon as possible. On the first day of school, Loi showed overwhelming power by easily surpassing everyone. Shortly, to find Loi to tempt him with a chocolate banana. Loi said he just met Soma, but as he turned around, the guy suddenly disappeared, making AK suspicious. A few days later, Chrome was reinstated and returned to work at the officer school. Jolene asked about Mathohan's situation, but got snubbed by him. Noticing this, Jolene immediately kicked Chrome's Peter and warned him to think twice before speaking. By royal decree, Mathohan was exiled to a distant place facing countless dangers. Mathohan almost became a meal for a white rabbit until AK suddenly appeared, blasting it away and saving him. In return, AK asked the young man to take care of the wheat fields because the grasshopper demon lord had caused a famine on the continent before. Back then, AK used the Van June technique to improve the wheat so it could be harvested year-round. Mathohan recalled how his village was once given wheat and was deeply moved. After entrusting the mission to Mathohan, AK went to find Loi again. The old lady casually barged into Loi's room and stared at him, changing clothes, but Sukana was caught by Maisie and dragged out for questioning. AK admitted she wanted Loi to become a soldier so she could see him wearing a dignified uniform. Maisie rejected this lame excuse and kicked AK back to the village. It's known that Maisie decided to stay here because she really liked the free life she had now. A moment later, Loi appeared in a military uniform, making the two disciples drool over him. While Maisie wondered who helped, Loi and Roll, Selen's group, arrived to invite Loi to class. When Selene and AK crossed paths, the air was thick with tension. Ike tried to teach Selene a lesson, but her belt protected her. AK revealed she wanted to use a runic spell to make Selene crash painfully, but that plan was stopped by Loi's fateful red thread. AK realized it was the skin of the sacred beast, Richard, a moving treasure of Kanzan village that protects its user from all evil. Alan also came to welcome Loi, so Loi revealed to everyone that he was the one who helped him enroll. Alan recounted how Loi saved his life when the monster appeared, and because he wanted to advance thanks to that contribution, he helped Loi join the school. Selene said Alan didn't need the fame that the young man kept bragging about. For now, Alan was putting that aside because fulfilling his master's dream was his duty. And even though Loi refused, Alan insisted he wouldn't give up until Loi agreed. AK wasn't pleased with Selen's attitude and attacked her secretly. These two saints kept insulting each other while Loi's group discussed accepting disciples. This group was strong, but as everyone said, Maisie couldn't take it anymore and sent the old lady back to the village so Loi's group could calmly go to school tonight. On the way back, Loi got a chance to gaze at the stars in the sky. Magi thanked him for helping. Her and Loi said even if it's just picking up trash, he's always ready. When the villagers saw everyone, the village chief was furious and asked what they were doing here. It turned out Maisie cared about the sacred sword because rumors said whoever possessed it would rule the world. It's known that without strong enough magic power, the sword cannot be pulled out. The chief exploited this for personal gain, so Maisie asked Loi to pull it out and stop his scheme. Maisie guessed it was fake and prioritized announcing that the sword should be drawn as soon as possible. On the first day of school, Loi showed overwhelming strength by easily surpassing everyone. Shortly after, Lin announced they would postpone the next class to find someone to have a friendly duel with Sokro Magic Academy. Alan knew Azami School had been losing for years, so Linne was eager for a win. She explained to, after Line announced they would postpone the next class to find someone to duel with Sokro Magic Academy, Alan explained that Azami Academy had been losing for years, so Linne was very eager to win. She guided everyone on the three main ways to use magic chanting spells, drawing symbols, or using written seals. Additionally, magic stones or staffs could act as intermediaries. After the theory lesson, Jolene brought out magical resistance dolls for practice. Selene and Jiho Both fire-type users made Jolene somewhat... Everyone knows there are 3 main ways to use magic chanting spells, drawing symbols, painting, or writing seals. Besides that, magic stones or staffs can be used as mediums. After the theory lesson, Jolene brought out a magic-resistant dummy for everyone to practice on. Celine and Jiho are both fire element users, which made Jolene a bit impressed. When it was Loi's turn to use fire magic, he blew away an entire forest, yet the guy was complaining he had failed. After a series of tests, Linny advised Loi to use wind magic in battle. Jiho immediately opposed, saying that would cause casualties. No sooner said than done. The world's most miserable dummy shattered into 100 pieces, forcing Linny to apologize for not letting Loi fight during the break. Celine then rushed over to ask Jolene to teach her healing magic since she wanted to heal someone she cared about and form a bond with them. Jiho said healing magic is very hard to learn and many people quit halfway. Moreover, even a small mistake can cost the victim dearly. Alan said the harder it is, the more reason to learn it. Right then, to strengthen their magic foundation, even Loi wanted to learn. So Jolene decided to open a healing training camp. Since they needed injured people, Celine turned Alan into a guinea pig. The guy screamed. He wasn't even hurt, but joked like that. Facing the colonel, Alan could only bitterly accept his fate. Just a 12-Bay river boy. Magi was chilling when 2 passing guests showed up. After introductions, Magi realized both were comrades and sisters of Dark Girl. They wanted Magi to find the person in the photo who turned out to be Jiho. Suddenly, Philo sensed a huge power from Loi and attacked. Despite taking a critical kick, Loi was completely unharmed. The guy even mistakenly thought Philo was aiming at a fly and apologized for not dodging the kick earlier. Loi cheekily claimed he knew the person in the photo, stopping Magi from interrupting. Philo seemed to forget why she came and insisted on taking Loi as her master, even if she had to be his servant. Loi said this was Magi's home. So Philo turned to ask her permission. Already, Philo wanted to serve Loi from A to Z, making Magi furious and kicking both of them out. Loi felt his ribs crack from the kick, so Magi advised him to get treatment quickly. The guy said it was fine because it would heal in 3 hours. Magi told herself to get used to Loi's power since they were living together. Magi was daydreaming about a bright future when AK suddenly came to scold her for bringing Loi to the Holy Sword Village. The old lady was also annoyed that Magi was lost in Loi's smile. When Loi came out, Magi was nowhere to be found because AK had turned her into a butterfly. Magi returned to human form late at night, but Loi caught Sukana naked. The guy was shocked but pretended not to notice and went back to his room. Soon, it was time for the friendly match exams. Chrome saw everyone working hard and wanted to prepare a reward. Jolene revealed her reason for wanting to win was because that venomous snake Kamga had become the head of Zokyo Academy. Just as Cao Cao was mentioned, she appeared but only treated Jolene as background noise and focused on Jiho. It turned out Ro had studied at Zokyo with Jolene. She was very ambitious and as a teacher, eliminated many rivals to become headmaster. Ro threatened Jiho to return to her side or lose what was important. Jiho was furious at her attitude, yet Ro shamelessly waited for Jiho's answer. On the day of the friendly match before leaving, Philo reminded Loi to consider accepting her as a disciple. Celine immediately separated the two and questioned Loi about who she was. The guy drowsily said she wanted to live with him, making Selin even more furious. In the following lessons, Loi noticed Jiho was troubled but couldn't share with anyone. That night, Magi was tense because Loi had seen her embarrassed state, but suddenly, Loi broke the tension by asking Magi how to make someone happy. Magi thought he was trying to comfort her and felt thrilled inside. She suggested Loi invite that person for tea and cake as a date to share youthful feelings. The guy was worried the other wouldn't want to go out with a nobody like him. Loi caught him nude. The youth was shocked but pretended nothing happened and returned to his room. Soon, the exchange exam approached. Chrome saw everyone trying hard and wanted to prepare a reward for them. Jolene revealed the reason for her eagerness to win was because the venomous Kamga had become the head of Zokyo Academy. Just mentioning Cao Cao, and she appears but she treats Jolene like air and targets Jiho instead. It's known that Ro was a former classmate of Jolene's at Zokyo Academy. She's very ambitious, and when she became a teacher, she eliminated many rivals to climb to the headmaster's seat. Ro was threatening Jiho to return to her side or lose things important to him. Jiho was furious at her attitude, yet she shamelessly waited for his answer. On the day of the friendly match before leaving, Philo reminded Loi to consider taking her as a disciple. Celine immediately stepped in to separate those two and questioned Loi about who she was. The guy dumbly said, before leaving the friendly match, Philo reminded Loi to consider accepting. She became a disciple. Selin immediately stepped in to separate these two and questioned Loi, asking who she was. The dazed young man said she wanted to live with him, which only made Celine even more furious. In the following classes, Loi realized that Jiho was troubled by something she couldn't share with anyone. That night, Magi was very tense because Loi had seen her embarrassed state, when suddenly Loi broke the tension by asking Magi how to make someone happy. Magi thought the guy was trying to comfort her, so she felt like celebrating inside. She suggested Loi invite that person out for tea and pastries as a date to share youthful feelings. The guy was a bit worried, afraid the other person wouldn't want to go with someone ordinary like him. Magi reassured him that any girl would like that, so Loi decided to ask Jiho on a date and see how it goes. Magi froze when she realized she'd been overestimating her power this whole time. Meanwhile, Celine was jealous and bitter toward Jiho because if she didn't return to normal, Loi wouldn't pay attention to her. Celine decided to show Jiho a handsome photo of Loi, but Jiho didn't care at all. Alan teased Jiho, saying she always acts calm but loves dirty talk, so he got kicked immediately. Suddenly, Loi approached Jiho and begged her to go out with him. When they got to the tea shop, Loi advised Jiho to open up about her feelings because he was worried she wasn't happy. Celine secretly watched them so lovingly but got so jealous she was practically crawling on all fours. She was unlucky to be spotted by Alan, so she gave him a beating to avoid ruining the big plan and then sneaked inside. Finally, Jiho, he poured out his feelings because he saw she was unhappy, which made him very worried. Celine secretly watched them, her jealousy boiling over like a kettle ready to blow. She was so upset she ended up crawling on all fours. Unfortunately, Alan spotted her, so he gave him a beating to avoid ruining the big plan, then sneaked inside immediately. Finally, Jiho opened up and revealed that she and Dao had met before at the orphanage. Dao was very skilled in magic and had taught Jiho. However, because of her injured arm, she couldn't help the orphanage much. One day, Dao brought back a prosthetic arm made of mitrin as a gift for Jiho, which made her very happy. But the truth was that Dao wanted to use the power of mitrin to enhance her magic and then trade her life for the ability to wield the sacred sword. Jiho warned Loi not to touch this arm because it would drain magic power. Since Jiho couldn't remove it, her only option was to run away from the terrifying Dao, who had staged many crimes to turn Jiho into a wanted criminal. Jiho had trusted Dao deeply, but after that shock, she completely lost faith in people. Loi didn't hesitate to hold Jiho's hand and comfort her, even though he was just a regular officer now. But Loi promised he would become a man worthy of Jiho's trust. Suddenly, Celine appeared and scolded Jiho is a traitor for not telling her about this, although they usually fought like cats and dogs without. Jiho Selen would be very lonely. She was determined to win the friendly match and show Dao's group what real power tastes like. Jiho was deeply grateful for their kindness, and together they vowed to defeat the villains. The next day, Zhao brought along the Philo sisters to the match venue. Philo immediately grabbed Loi's hand, begging him to be her opponent, which made Salen furious. Jolene was about to say Loi wouldn't participate when a mysterious figure suddenly appeared. She introduced herself as Makona and demanded the Teep Ryu kids step back, saying from now on she would replace Loi to prove she was better than that guy. Right from the start, Makona controlled the weather with a flashy display, but show-offs like her rarely last long. Loi kindly tried to help Makona up, but was met with contemptuous mockery. Makona insulted Loi as a useless person hiding behind a fake moral facade. Loi had always seen himself as weak, so he silently accepted Makona's harsh words. After the match, she went to find Mozzie to tend her wounds. Seeing Mozzie's radiant smile made Makona's heart flutter, making her forget all the pain she had just endured. Noticing her blushing, Mozzie thought Makona had a fever and checked her temperature. This intimate gesture made Makona extremely happy. But the feeling quickly vanished when Loi showed up. Loi recounted their recent friendly match, which made Makona very uncomfortable. On top of that, they talked so closely it was like Makona didn't even exist in the room. Makona could only swallow her tears and leave despite the pouring rain outside. A few days after the friendly match, which was also officially held earlier, Jiho, who once gave her all for Dao, had now been corrupted. Jiho declared she would protect the orphanage from now on and make Dao regret what he had done. Before the match, Chrome announced the winner would receive a large sum of money and get to touch the sacred sword. Jiho interrogated him about how he got it in Seseo, which even made Line nervous. Celine retold the story of Jiho's arm, helping Line understand the situation. Ro got so angry when he found out that he decided to join the match with everyone else. Since Dao broke the rules first, Jolene had to send Loi out to the field, and Jiho begged her to teach him healing magic. Meanwhile, AK was relentlessly torturing Mozzie for preventing her from watching Loi shine in the arena. Suddenly, the villagers sent an SOS signal forcing AK to return there. Before, leaving AK cursed Mozzie to fall off her bike every 10 minutes. If Mozzie sincerely repents on her knees, AK would lift the curse. After saying this, Mozzie ran to the bathroom to deal with her sorrow. The match format was one-on-one, and the first to win 2 rounds would be the overall winner. They were only allowed to use magic staves, magic stones, or magic items. Physical attacks like punching and kicking were banned, and violators would lose their right to compete or be disqualified. Loi was a weakling, so Celine spoke up to defend her crush. The first match saw Celine was rewarded a large sum of money and allowed to touch the holy sword. Jiho interrogated him at SAO about obtaining this, making even Linne nervous. Celine recounted the story of Jiho's arm, which helped Linne understand the situation. Ro was so angry about this that he decided to join the competition with everyone else. Since Dao broke the rules first, Jolene had to bring Loi out to the arena, and Jiho also came to ask her to teach him healing magic. At the same time, AK was relentlessly torturing Mazi because she wasn't allowed to see Loi shine in the arena. Suddenly, the villagers sent a distress signal forcing AK to return there. Before leaving, AK cursed Mazi to fall off her bike once every 10 minutes. If Mazi sincerely repents on her knees, AK will lift the curse. After saying this, Mazi ran to the bathroom to relieve her sadness. The competition format was one-on-one, and whoever won 2 matches first would be the overall winner. They were only allowed to use magic staff magic, magic stones, or magic items. Physical attacks like punches and kicks were prohibited. Violators would lose their right to compete or be penalized. Loi was a weakling, so Celine immediately spoke up to defend her crush. In the first match, Celine faced a formidable opponent named Philo. At first, Celine was overly confident, believing the belt would guarantee her absolute safety, but it didn't react to Philo's attack, almost causing her to get KO'd. Celine didn't understand why it didn't work at SAO and had to painfully dodge attacks herself. She continuously threatened and intimidated the belt until it submitted and helped block the attacks for her. Celine knew herself. She even went for the kiss. Celine didn't understand why the hell she acted like that and had to painfully dodge the attacks herself. The little one kept threatening and intimidating with the belt, forcing her to submit and block the blows for her. Celine knew she had successfully tamed her, so she casually shrugged off every attack from Philo. After messing around, Celine used the belt to lock Philo's body tight. Just when she thought she won, the referee declared Philo the winner because Celine used a forbidden physical attack. Losing this round, she planned a new move. Jolene decided to send her trump card Loi into the match against Mina. She knew Loi had physical strength on par with Philo, but since this fight was magic-based, she was still confident. As soon as it started, Mina launched a water sphere that messed up Loi's breathing. However, even after 20 minutes, Loi didn't fall, so Mina had to dispel it. She then cast a water wall, releasing mist magic to blind Loi, but Loi still saw through it, and used wind magic to slam Mina into the wall. Despite her overwhelming victory, Loi felt a bit embarrassed because of Mina's botched spell. Afterward, Philo escorted Mina out and deeply admired Loi's strength. The final match between Jiho and Dao was incredibly intense due to wing magic. Mitrine's arm was very strong, so they wanted to see who would run out of mana first despite the threats. No matter what Jiho did, it only led to her defeat. As soon as Dao finished speaking, she rushed to rip off Jiho's prosthetic arm, confident she'd won, but unexpectedly, while Dao babbled on, Jiho immediately counterattacked with her other arm. Years ago, Dao taught Jiho that if you ignore foreign objects and wounds and use magic to heal them, the objects get sealed inside the body. Just now, Jiho exploited this by embedding a magic stone into her arm and then using healing magic. Plus, Dao pretended to cast an advanced spell, scaring Dao into fainting. So Jiho won without using much strength, thanks to her top-tier bluffing skills. Dao was totally unsatisfied with the outcome because she still wanted to reach even higher ranks. Suddenly, a voice announced a place where only elites survive. To get there, Dao needed to possess the holy sword with world-dominating power. However, before she could reach it, Dao suddenly woke up. She immediately asked her assistant about the holy sword's status and learned it had been given to Loi since Jiho and Celine were still hospitalized. The assistant even discovered that the one who drew the holy sword was an Eastern water witch and her gang. Moreover, she was living with her younger brother, whom she doted on fiercely. Dao, hearing this, immediately planned to recruit the witch to her side. So she ordered Philo to infiltrate the witch's house and kidnap the person the witch loved and protected. The assistant was uneasy about Philo, but Dao really wanted to exploit her power, so she assigned her this mission. When Philo arrived, she saw Maisie kneeling before a crystal ball looking quite ridiculous. Due to the master's curse of clumsiness, Maisie had to struggle crawling to the bathroom and accidentally dropped the clip Loi gave her. Philo guessed the crystal ball was fragile and needed protection. So the annoying brat stole the ball, thinking it was the object the master mentioned. When Loi brought the holy sword home, he found Mazi's clip on the floor and a note on the table saying the opponent held someone important and demanded the holy sword be brought to the southern lighthouse for release. Then Alan suddenly came to find Loi, so he invited him to help rescue Maisie as expected. Dao was utterly helpless, seeing the clueless Philo bring the ball back. Suddenly, the assistant burst in with news that Loi and Alan were bringing the holy sword here. Seeing Loi, Philo's reckless blood overpowered her brain, and she ran to find him for round 2. Loi begged Philo to reveal Maisie's location, but the brat refused and just wanted to punch right away. Since Loi defeated Mina, Philo had decided he was the worthy opponent for a life or death battle. She once wanted to take him as her master, but now that she had to bring the holy sword to the lighthouse in the south. At that moment, Alan suddenly came to find Loi, so he invited him to join the rescue. Maisie, as expected. Dao was extremely helpless, seeing the clueless Philo bringing back the orb. Suddenly, the assistant rushed in with news that Loi and Alan were bringing the holy sword here. Philo saw Loi, her blood pumping more recklessly than brains, and ran to find him for round 2. Loi begged Philo to reveal Maisie's location, but this stubborn girl refused and just wanted to fight immediately. Since Loi defeated Mina, Philo was sure he was a worthy opponent for a life or death battle. She had once wanted to take him as her master, but now things had changed. Seeing Philo completely serious, Loi had to accept her challenge. However, he wanted Philo to reveal Maisie's location if he won. Despite his bravado, Loi was still nervous because back in the village, Loi was taken down by some girls. Like Loi, he accidentally saw a wooden barrel nearby and got the idea to arm wrestle. Philo, the guy, bragged that his grandfather taught arm wrestling as the most traditional fighting style. When Philo learned Loi was from Kanjan village, she laughed out loud because that explained his destructive power. Philo accepted the challenge and had an arm wrestling match. Competing with Philo, the guy was bragging that his grandfather taught wrestling as the most traditional fighting style. When he found out Loi was from Kanjan village, Philo burst out laughing because that explained Loi's destructive power. Philo accepted the challenge and they had an extremely heated wrestling match. Alan was targeted by that assistant since Loi asked him to guard the holy sword. Luckily, Mina arrived just in time to help Alan deal with him. She had no intention of taking the holy sword, only came to block Dao because she dared to use Philo as a tool. Meanwhile, Philo and Loi wrestled from the ground into the air. Philo seemed about to defeat Loi, but Loi suddenly unleashed power that sent both crashing back to the ground. Loi was extremely happy to realize he had won because he actually did it. Suddenly, Philo confessed to Loi, saying since Loi was from Kanjan village, he truly deserved to have this body sent to him. Moreover, Philo didn't want to marry someone outside their martial arts sect. Loi didn't care about what Dao said and instead asked about Maisie's whereabouts. So Philo recounted the whole story, making Loi speechless when Mina and Alan ran up. Philo proudly told her little sister that he had found his love interest Loi during the wedding. While still a bit angry, AK appeared and asked about Loi. Dao replied she didn't know and told AK to shut up. AK thought Dao was keeping Loi from him, so he flew into a rage and gave Dao a lesson to remember. Seeing this injustice, Alan couldn't stand by and immediately ran to save her. Thanks to his heroic act, Alan was featured in the news the next day. As for the holy sword, Chrome decided to store it in the treasure vault inside the palace to settle the debt once and for all. While hospitalized, Dao started reflecting on her life and what she had done wrong. She remembered the happy times with Jiho at the hospital. Jiho loved learning healing magic, but refused wanting to teach basic magic instead. They once promised to rebuild this place impressively when they grew up. Back in the present, Jiho was peeling an apple for Dao, and Han would return in a few days. Philo's two sisters went into the forest to capture a man. According to Mina, this was a mission assigned by the king with generous funding. Mina wanted to use the reward to enjoy a fancy steak dinner, but before going, they had to bring him to the medical station for treatment since the next day marked the start of a long vacation. Jiho couldn't attend the horse race with Loi. Suddenly, Celine showed up in a terrible mood because her parents forced her to go home, ruining the plan to go bird hunting with Loi at the hot springs. The plan was completely shattered. The silly girl even tried to burn the house down to get a date with a guy. Loi refused because he had other plans. But Celine was delusional, thinking Loi was considering marriage. Jiho warned Celine to keep her dignity, which led to Celine asking why she invited Loi on a date. Jiho tried to explain, but Alan suddenly interrupted, boasting that the guy would soon go on a blind date, and the important thing was the girl made the first move, making Alan feel very valuable. Alan already came up with 749 romance drama scripts, but unfortunately, no one wanted to hear the guy's nonsense. Loi returned home to find Maisie and AK locked in a tense standoff. Loi said starting tomorrow he would work part-time as a resident helper, forcing both to stop. Loi was introduced to work at a large hotel owned by acquaintances of Chrome. Since they were short on cleaning and cooking staff, Loi couldn't refuse and accepted. AK pretended to greet the newcomer while Magi went traveling to stay with Loi. Unexpectedly, Loi threw cold water on them, telling them not to come because he didn't want to rely on anyone. The next day before Loi even arrived, he terrified a man with his aura. That man was Kami, the restaurant owner and former captain of the Imperial Guard. Next, Kami took Loi on a tour and told him about strange incidents recently. His staff had been fainting one after another for unknown reasons. Kami reported to the investigator and assigned Loi to work here. To keep her pride, so she asked Kung why she invited Loi on a date at SAO. Jiho tried to explain, but Alan suddenly barged in to show off that the guy was going to a match soon. The important thing was The girl made the first move, making Alan feel very valuable. Before anything, Alan had already imagined 7,749 romantic scenarios. Unfortunately, no AI wants to listen to this guy's nonsense. As soon as Loy got home, he saw Maisie and AK facing off. It was intense. Loy said starting tomorrow he would work as a live-in staff, forcing both of them to stop. Loy had been introduced to a job. At a big hotel, owned by Chrome's acquaintance because they were short on cleaning and cooking staff, Loy couldn't refuse and accepted. AK used the excuse to greet the other party while Magi was traveling to stay with Loy. Unexpectedly, Loy threw cold water on them. He told them not to follow because he didn't want to rely on anyone. The next day before Loy even arrived, a man was terrified by his aura. The man's name was Kami, the owner of this restaurant and a former captain of the Royal Guards. Next, Kami took Loy on a tour around and told him about strange recent events. All his employees had been falling unconscious one by one without clear reasons. Kami had reported it and was waiting for an investigation while letting Loy work here. Loy said besides his main duties, if Kami needed anything, he was ready to help. Kami had just stepped away briefly when the soldier, Kikyo, slacked off on her duties. The uncle introduced Loy to Kikyo and told her to properly guide the newcomer. Outwardly, she obeyed, but as soon as Kami left, Kikyo flipped and made Loy do everything alone. While she rambled about philosophy, Loy cleaned everything up. He even polished the ceiling until it shone. Kami was impressed and covered Kikyo's eyes, asking Loy what kind of creature he was, but the secret couldn't be revealed. Then Kami took Loy to change into the employee uniform and told him that tomorrow he had to serve a top-tier noble. No matter what that guy did, Loy had to keep smiling. The next day, Kami and Loy welcomed Thugel Nin early. Although the uncle served enthusiastically, Thugel Nin felt like Kami wanted to kick the guest out. Even the assistant offering drinks got mocked by Kami, but since Kami had multiple personalities, one moment he was drinking and admiring the beautiful scenery, which wasn't so bad. The assistant agreed, saying Thuzelin spoke sensibly, then got scolded harshly by the old man. Suddenly, Thuzelin asked Loy what he thought of the cypress trees. Loy said they were beautiful, but a bit wasted, since he had carefully trimmed them just to be admired. Thuzelin was surprised to learn Loy knew about bonsai. Loy explained that the lumberjacks back home taught him. Thuzelin said his family used to work in forestry and understood the value of that cypress forest. Using it just for decoration wasted its true nature. Currently, it's considered an English heritage, which prevents him from investigating further. This confused Kiki a bit because she didn't know what he wanted to investigate. Thuzelin has a son around Loy's age, but recently he's been too rebellious, causing Thuzelin great worry. Meanwhile, everyone around Thuzelin praises the cypress forest's beauty. Only Loy understood its true value, making Thuzelin feel like he found his true love. That night, Kiki secretly reported to Thuzelin the true value, making him feel like he found his true love. That night, Kiki secretly informed Thuzelin about someone illegally breeding Chen plants here to make money. Thuzelin knew Kami was a former Azami soldier who once planned wars. Along with the continuous incidents of people fainting due to Tren's harm, he suspected Kami's involvement. Before the cypress forest became a cultural heritage site, he had to act or it would become a trend haven. Soon, Thuzelin's son would attend a local nobles matchmaking event where trend dealers would also be present. Thuzelin wanted to use the matchmaking event to gather more information about the case. A Chen seedling called the Demon King seedling was stolen from the monster research area. Rumors say a suspicious street vendor brought the seedling here, and since then fainting incidents started. According to scholars, the seedling parasitizes throughout the bodies of humans and animals, dramatically boosting physical strength. Kiki thought of Loy and told Thuzelin about Loy's strange power. Thuzelin told Kiki to apply an herbal concoction on Loy or mix it in his food to expel the Chen. The next day when Kiki saw Loy chopping vegetables in the kitchen, she no longer doubted and immediately brought him a cup of tea with the medicine. It had been stolen from the monster research area. Rumors said a suspicious street vendor brought the sprout to this region, and since then, incidents of people passing out began to happen. According to scholars, the plant sprout would parasitize throughout the human and animal bodies, astonishingly boosting their physical strength. Kiki immediately thought of Loy and said to Thuzelin about his strange power. He told Kiki to apply the herbal concoction on Loy's body or put it in his food to expel the Chen parasite. The next day when Kiki saw Loy chopping vegetables in the kitchen, she stopped doubting and immediately brought a cup of tea containing the medicine for him to drink. She said she was patrolling the area. Loy then said since he was a reserve officer, he couldn't just stand by watching others struggle. Kiki thought Loy had been tricked by Kami into enlisting to cultivate the Tren seed inside him. Just as Loy was about to drink, Kami suddenly burst in and told Loy to go to sleep. The old man took a sip of the tea but had to spit it out because it tasted like getting punched in the mouth. Kiki thought she had been exposed and quickly fled. The uncle suddenly realized this had been going on since childhood and Thuzelin came here as the victims kept increasing, so he swore to make them pay. Thanks to a generous reward, Jiho decided to take a short trip to relax, very pleased with the scenery and the fully equipped hotel room. A while later, Loi was sent to give a massage to a guest who turned out to be Jiho. Loi said there had been many strange cases lately, so he wanted to come here to help. After getting ready, the young man invited Jiho to lie on the bed for a massage. Jiho imagined being touched all over and couldn't accept it. Loi had to apologize, saying he was just a lowly guy, when suddenly he heard a scream while Celine was at a nearby hotel with her father. When they arrived, he told the staff to change her into the outfit prepared earlier. As soon as she put it on, Celine was pushed to a matchmaking meeting where the person was none other than Alan. Celine pretended to feel dizzy and nauseous to leave, but the old man quickly stopped her. Celine said she had found her soulmate at the officer school, but he still insisted she go. Celine was very disappointed in her father and had to follow him to the meeting place. Countless thoughts of punishing Alan to end this kept burning in Celine's mind. As soon as the door opened, Celine lunged at Loi and pulled him into the interrogation room. The two fathers didn't disturb them and moved on to discuss the main issue. Loi wondered what Celine was doing here, but she said love had connected the two of them. She even invited Loi to play along, but unfortunately Jiho caught them and warned them. Jiho asked Celine why she didn't question why the matchmaking candidate wasn't Alan, but she didn't care. Actually, Alan had suddenly fainted in the open bathroom earlier, so Thuzelin asked Loi to replace him. When she learned Loi's purpose for coming here, Celine came up with a unique plan. She wanted to use the date to find out who the culprit was, while Jiho took the role of an investigator from inside. It's true that timing beats skill, yet Loi completely agreed with the plan, which made Jiho too bored to say anything. On the first date, Celine kept staring at Loi lovingly and made the young man compliment her beauty. When Loi didn't cooperate, she threatened him with force. This would make everyone think their relationship was unnatural. The young man seemed like he had never... Now she asked if he wanted to or not, and Loi had no choice but to comply. Then this girl suddenly got hyperactive. Luckily, Jiho arrived just in time to rescue the most unfortunate guy of the year. In the following days, Thuzelin still used a stand-in to continue attending matchmaking meetings, so Kami swore to expose his crimes. Meanwhile, Jiho asked Celine about today's purpose, and she only remembered it was to investigate the Soma case, delivering goods. So they coincidentally met Loi's group here. He said someone planted many bombs and gasoline to burn things, so kind Soma brought extra magic stones to increase destruction. Jiho guessed this was a trick by that rotten Zilen, but she pretended to be clueless and hugged Loi tightly. Jiho saw a dangerous look in Soma's eyes. Loi introduced Soma as someone who used to live in John's village and considered him like an older brother. Loi proudly said he had become a cadet at the officer school. Soma congratulated him before saying goodbye to everyone and going to deliver the goods. Celine told Jiho to transport the goods back to the hotel, while she and Loi would continue their little investigation under the pretense of investigating, but in reality, Celine had taken over Loi's room all day. While enjoying the yacht view, Celine recounted being cursed by a belt. Her father tried everything to help his beloved daughter, but when the curse was lifted, he still forced Celine to go to matchmaking. But it was thanks to the curse that Celine found her destined lover, Loi. The young man confessed he wouldn't be so talented without the help of everyone. Celine said it was because he was always kind to many people that he deserved to receive such things, making Loi love life much more. The young man told Celine to keep this secret, making her happy because it was their private secret. Kikyo wanted to separate Loi from that rotten Celine, but she clung to Loi like glue until Celine... Kiki wanted to separate Loi from Celine's clinginess, but she stuck to Loi like glue until Celine left somewhere. Then Kiki dared to approach Loi, but he still caught her. She pretended to say Loi had been trying really hard lately, so today she would reward him with a massage. Loi also wanted to learn more about massage, so Kiki got right to work. Kiki kept searching for it but couldn't find it anywhere. Suddenly a thought struck her that it might be in Loi's bathroom. Unfortunately, before she could touch it, Celine returned and immediately attacked Kiki. However, Kiki dodged and countered. Celine was no pushover either. She easily broke free and launched a second wave of attacks. Suddenly, Loi stepped out with a six-pack body that distracted Celine completely. Taking advantage of this, Kikyo quickly slipped away. Celine questioned Loi about why he was shirtless, and he explained that Kikyo was teaching massage techniques. Celine then had a new idea, telling Loi to go to the hotel's hot spring to cleanse his soul. Unexpectedly, the plan failed because Jiho was there to stop this wild girl from losing control. Besides, AK and Mazi also showed up, making Loi a bit uneasy. On top of that, the Philo sisters appeared, forcing Celine to use her energy to shield them from these wild girls. Jiho thought they came here to fight. However, Mina said they were hired by the Azami kingdom and Philo would now be everyone's classmate. She declared she would first become Loi's disciple and eventually snatch him as her husband. Mina revealed she was ordered by the kingdom to investigate the disappearances around the hotel. While the team discussed serious matters downstairs, Zealand struggled to keep spiders away from her husband. Mina continued telling the story about illegal husband raising. AK understood the situation immediately and guessed that if it wasn't resolved soon, the whole area would be invaded by Chen. Loi suddenly recalled that Chen was what grew around John's village back then. Everyone was surprised that this Loi girl was actually the village chief. Through Alan's fainting, AK realized the seed had parasitized someone and infiltrated the hotel. Mozzie warned that if it wasn't handled properly, the kingdom might have to redraw the map. Loi immediately stood up, wanting to take action with the village chief as soon as possible. The young man forgot he was going all out, so AK saw everything. The sisters behind also got quite the show. Philo quickly threw AK aside because besides them, someone else was spying. Kikyo barely woke up and saw Thuzelin's assistant there too. She noticed he had been parasitized by Chen, and he confessed he was the one who brought the Chen seed here. Kikyo scolded him to shut up, because his constant babbling was distracting her from thinking. She thought Kami was the culprit, but it turned out to be this bastard. He seized the moment to attack Kikyo, completely draining her power. Loi's appearance shattered the intense atmosphere between them. The young man complimented the secretary's new look, saying it was a cool cosplay. The bastard got angry at the insult and released all the creatures trapped here at once. He introduced himself as the Demon King Shumu Akin. Loi, the naive boy, saw his performance was very convincing and even praised him. When the creatures swarmed in, Loi just waved his hands and feet lightly, making them all vanish instantly. Meanwhile, Thuzelin and Selin's father were discussing illegal husband raising because the number of mysterious faintings was increasing. Kami summarized that this coincided with the time Thuzelin arrived here. After Loi defeated the Chen, he reverted to his normal wooden form. Even then, Loi still thought it was all just the secretary's little play. While the Magi group was chilling and enjoying the scenery, they saw the secretary heading towards the castle. Celine's father said he bought Chen from a dark-skinned young man claiming to be from the Donkin clan. Thuzelin suspected the secretary after hearing this but didn't know where he was. Just then, Minoki smashed the glass and barged in, calling Thuzelin an arrogant noble, saying he had tried to ruin his reputation by letting the Demon King's seed parasitize and illegally raise husbands. As soon as Minoki attacked Thuzelin, everyone was present to stop him. The two Philo sisters combined their swords and kicked Minoki out. Since magic didn't work on him, Jiho asked Celine and Philo to hold him off while she ran off somewhere. While Celine was fighting, she almost got hit by a falling rock, but her father jumped out and saved her life. Jiho immediately called Alan to wake up and ordered the young man to throw a bomb at Minoki. When Thuzelin tried to take action, everyone was there to stop him, the two sisters. Philo and Selin combined their twin swords to knock Minoki away. Because magic had no effect on him, Jiho asked Selin and Philo to hold him off for a moment while she ran somewhere. While Celine was focused on fighting and almost got hit by a falling rock, her father rushed out to save her. Jiho immediately called Alan to wake up and ordered the young man to throw a bomb at Minoki. Seeing the Philo sisters in danger, Jiho and Alan quickly used fire combined with gasoline to throw at the monster. After escaping, the Philo sisters used the great serpent's chains to tightly bind Minoki. Jiho seized the chance to create diamond dust. Seeing Philo sisters in danger, Jiho and Alan quickly combined fire with gasoline to throw at that monster. After escaping, the Philo sisters used the great water serpent technique to tightly bind Minoki. Jiho seized the moment to create diamond dust, successfully freezing that bastard. However, he was still able to attack them, so everyone had to work together to deal with the core inside. On this side, Celine was trying to rescue her father from the rock. In the middle of all this chaos, that jerk still had the nerve to claim he was a very kind person, so no matter what she would do, her best to save her father. Suddenly, another rock fell, but this time Loi arrived just in time and told Celine to take her father to a safe place. Next, to say he's a very kind person, so no matter what happens, she will do her best to get her father out. Suddenly, another rock falls. But this time, Loi arrives just in time and tells Celine to take her father to a safe place to hide. Next, Loi runs to Maisie and is informed that the secretary is a monster from Ryan. Right now, everyone is counting on Loi, so he decides to take a risky shot. Loi skillfully overcomes Minoki's obstacles and easily destroys his core. Defeating the monster for the first time makes Loi feel insanely excited. The guy is even happier being trusted by everyone and given this important mission. Soma, watching from afar, also feels proud of Loi's recent performance. At this moment, the village chief wakes up and realizes Soma buried him underground. He knows that even if he does this, AK will be fine, because she is essentially ageless and immortal. AK, knowing Soma colluded with that bastard, flies into a rage, but Soma isn't afraid and even taunts AK, "Just wait, there are still many things for you to enjoy." After that incident, AK struggled a lot to erase the memories of uninvolved people and then repaired this hotel. Thuzeolin apologizes to Kami for not supervising his subordinates well. Kami also feels guilty for doubting Thuziolin and promises to treat him generously next time. Hearing this, Thuziolin immediately gifts Kikyo to Kami to use as he wishes. Celine's father apologizes for making his daughter go on blind dates so many times. He promises to watch over Celine's military path from now on and asks Loi to take good care of her. Hearing this, the brat starts daydreaming about their marriage approval, so Jiho and Philo have to pull her back to reality. Aik says she's very tired and wants someone to massage her, so Loi wants to practice because he just learned from Kikyo. The guy approaches, hugs AK, and slams her hard enough to nearly cause a concussion. On a quiet late night, Soma takes Makona to meet a man who at first glance looks like the priest's father, but isn't really. Seeing Makona's determination to kill Loi to claim her love, the man tells Soma to give her a kind of medicine. The guy says it's made from Chen and Aberdeen. But the brown-haired girl doesn't care and drinks it all at once. Makona's body immediately transforms, causing her immense pain. Soma is extremely excited, hoping Makona can overcome it to control that great power. With strong willpower, she gains control of her body and prepares to set off for the decisive battle against the species. After that, back home, Loi goes back to being Maisie's errand boy. The guy has prepared breakfast, but the lady is still lazy and demands Loi feed her. If he likes it, he obliges, but something feels off. It turns out Celine has arrived and gives Maisie a lesson for daring to mess with her husband. Loi says today he will join everyone to hunt the giant snake as ordered by the king. Maisie grimaces in annoyance because the old man dares to push Loi into dangerous places, but thinking about it again, Loi himself is the real danger. Even though he doesn't know much about that place to become a real soldier, Loi must go train. While Alan worries about facing the giant snake, the girl Selin is impatient to get there to hold hands intimately with her crush. Philo immediately crushes Celine's dark intentions, and the girl decides she is the one going with Loi. Suddenly, Jolene orders everyone to get serious to welcome the king. Unexpectedly, the old man appears, looking extremely ugly. Lena says the giant snake lies in the deepest lair, although guarded by troops. Unusual things might happen, so they must be careful. Soma and So, hearing the troops found the giant snake, want to act early to prevent it from falling into their hands. AK is searching for Soma, but unfortunately arrives one step too late, to be impatient just to hold hands intimately with her crush. Philo immediately crushed Celine's dark intentions and declared she was the one going with Loi. Suddenly, Jolene ordered everyone to be serious to welcome the king. Unexpectedly, the old man appeared, looking extremely ridiculous. Lena said the great serpent was lying in the deepest lair. Although the area was guarded by the army, strange incidents might still occur, so they must be careful. Soma and Sue, upon hearing that the army had discovered the great serpent, wanted to act quickly to prevent it from falling into their hands. AK was chasing Soma, but unfortunately she was one step ahead. Upon entering, Loi asked for everyone's help. Jiho said, "Okay, little goat." Selin and Philo showed attitude towards each other, thinking Loi was talking to them. Jiho wondered why Alan was standing guard, so the two blonde girls said, "If you're scared, just say it, cutie." Alan defended himself, saying he wasn't afraid, but just cautious. Mozzie was walking around when suddenly AK arrived to capture Mozzie and lead the way to the great serpent. While the group went inside, Philo suddenly asked Jiho if she liked Loi or not. Celine also wanted Jiho to tell the truth because she had dated and been intimate with Loi before. That jerk even forced Jiho to kneel in a corner and started interrogating her. Jiho complied with the two and reminded them about their mission. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed, making Loi think the great serpent caused it. This brat even made Jiho kneel in a corner and started interrogating him. Jiho came along with those two and reminded them about their mission. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed, making Loi think it was caused by the giant serpent. So he ran over, but it was actually Maisie and AK who just fell here. The old lady kept smashing the wall to create the quickest path to the giant serpent. Maisie scouted around and accidentally found Makona lying inside a giant tree trap. Hearing Maisie's voice, the girl happily woke up. Maisie wondered why Makona was here, so she frowned and said she was waiting for the one who kidnapped her lover. When she learned it was Loi, Maisie started imagining all sorts of crazy scenarios. Sorry, my brain's a bit fried. Maisie wanted to know who Makona loved, but she refused to say. Suddenly, Makona attacked Maisie to lure Loi here. Makona even started groping Maisie randomly, making her think the girl had a parasite trend going on. Hearing Maisie's cries for help, Loi immediately showed up. As soon as Loi appeared, Makona transformed into a monster form to confront him, threatening that if Loi didn't hurry, she'd keep messing with Maisie. Makona unleashed countless vines to grab Loi, but he easily destroyed them all. She then sped up to pin Loi against the wall, thinking she could crush him, but Loi still managed to break free. The guy said that was nothing compared to everyone in John's village. Makona flew into a rage, thinking Loi was trolling her because that village only existed in legend. Suddenly, Loud noises erupted, so Jiho quickly ran toward the sound. When the group arrived there, Mazi advised everyone to stay away from the area. Seeing this, Makona switched to attack mode, forcing Loi to sacrifice himself to block the blows for them. She blamed the teammates for Loi's injuries, but Loi said it was thanks to them that he was able to do everything. Even if his wounds would never heal, he never planned to give up. The young man declared he would defeat Makona and proudly claimed to be a true soldier. Makona flew into a fury, again charging at Loi for a fierce battle. The intense fight cracked the ground and rocks around, causing everyone to fall down below. Makona unleashed continuous moves, using all her strength to pin Loi against the wall. Unfortunately, Loi grabbed Makona's tentacle and spun it like a top. After the fight ended, everyone gathered to congratulate Loi. The Great Serpent also appeared praising Loi's excellence, making even him impressed. The young man didn't remember the Great Serpent, but the serpent said that was because Loi was still as small as a peppercorn back then. He introduced himself as Vizitoza, the guardian beast of Kanzan village. His main duty was to protect the seal and maintain the power of Old Lady AK. Loi wondered why the Great Serpent was here. Then suddenly, he went berserk because AK had taken the skin from his back to make an apron. Vizitoza did not accept that. Humiliated, he packed up and left. Curious about who was parasitizing Makona, So Yu then spoke up. Upon seeing him, Loi sensed So Yu was extremely dangerous. So Yu was challenging Loi. Suddenly, AK emerged from the ground, demanding a reckoning. So Yu didn't remember what he did to make the Great Serpent thrash around. Taking advantage of their distraction, So Yu approached the Great Serpent and made him disappear to weaken the Kanjan barrier. Normally, with Vizitoza gone, AK would become weak like a child, but AK still had enough strength to slam So Yu like a divine fist. Even the Elder and AK were shocked. Actually, Vizitoza had merged into Celine's belt, which saved him from death by a hair. The root of the story was that AK had previously crafted that belt and sold it on the black market. Vizitoza and AK didn't hold back because no one dares to mess with So Yu like that. He declared he would help Kanjan village free Last Danjin and then leave using the barrier. Heading toward Alan, after hearing noise below, they rushed in to support their teammate. The young man saw the shadow of a monster, thinking it was the Great Serpent, and swung his sword ready to carve it up. Suddenly, the underground chamber collapsed, making the soldiers believe Alan possessed earth-shattering power. AK kept scolding. So Yu had planned to trap her here, but the truth was the fool destroyed the chamber himself. That's how it is. Now please, AK, move up the mountain to help me. Then AK told everyone to jump into the crystal ball to escape together. After returning, Alan was rewarded by the king for destroying Dandine and defeating the Great Serpent monster. The young man immediately refused to become king, feeling even more moved, and was praised as a diligent and honest soldier. So the king generously bestowed Alan the title of Dragon Slayer. Alan was truly a lucky guy, getting rewarded without even trying. That night, Loi couldn't stop thinking about So Yu because he shared a name with the main character in the book Loi often read. Then while everyone was partying, AK suddenly appeared to take the cart on a trip to Kanjan village. The king announced that Azami and the Zio Empire would hold a match hosted by the royal family. Both countries could use this match to improve their relationship, so the king would send Azami's strongest representative, though who it was remained unknown. AK transported everyone to Kanjan village by airship. Loi was a bit confused that Old Lady could use magic to fly there in a flash, but since someone was waiting ahead, they had to use this method. The strange trio was eager to get to Kanjan village. To find treasure, they harbored plans to register for marriage and fight strong opponents. So Maisie crushed their intentions because their goal was to heal Vizitoza. Maisie asked Chrome and Jolene if it was okay to follow, because something big was happening in the palace. The king had targeted Alan, so Mina was assigned the mission to capture him for the match. Loi greatly admired Alan's talent, while the young man just cried inside. Hopeless. Right now, Mina is responsible for babysitting, so those two can relax like that. AK. Take them to a cave to meet Dr. Hughes, also known as the king of the dwarf tribe. Nobody really believes this guy is the king. But the truth is only Hughes has the power to do that. Hughes, like AK, has a student body but a parent's soul, because both have lived for over a century. Hearing this, Hughes immediately grabbed VJ and scolded him for running away from home. VJ said it was all AK's fault, so Hughes yelled at AK like crazy. AK then reminded them of the idea, that it was VJ's idea to use his belt as a gift for Loi. Hughes got hit right in the feels and quickly pushed everyone away. They arrived at Kanjan village. Everyone was surprised to see how peaceful this place was, unlike what they had imagined. Yeah, however, as soon as they stepped in, the whole group felt an overwhelming pressure everywhere. Here, people don't need to climb stairs. They just jump like superheroes. Even if they're miles apart, they can communicate by throwing letters straight to the spot, Loi said. Since it's a remote countryside, they have to do that. Then he greeted an ant he hadn't seen in a long time when suddenly the neighbor guy asked Aunt Doryman for some magic power to put into the cannon to send him to the mountain ahead because he was a bit short on it. The lack of magic power caused him to go off course, making everyone wonder if he was really okay. Loi said they all rushed. Like that when in a hurry, and if they missed, they'd have to fly until the next day to reach Kanjan village peacefully. Dung a name that made the whole group feel extremely uneasy. At this moment, Loi's grandfather was carrying the Dai Sanha fish assassin back to Philo village, saw this, and came to greet and challenge the one known as the demon god Purito. The old man recognized this stance as his own style, so Loi said she had self-taught it. Loi explained that the divine fist style of her grandfather was a movement everyone in the village used for exercise. Philo felt like she was struck by lightning because what she considered martial arts was just health training. The grandfather intended to spar with Philo, so Jiho volunteered to take it home to help him. As soon as he arrived, Jiho immediately turned to stone, going all out on the way there, but shocked on the way back. Cho-Lin asked AK about Mitho Han's location and hurried there together. The first time meeting a crush after so many days apart, Cho-Lin was greeted by the young man with a shocking scene. Seeing Cho-Lin bashful, the girl made her big brother think she wanted to go to the bathroom. Mitho Han told them to relax outside in the field because near ink is black, but near nature is relaxing. Cho-Lin punched once because he just retired and was already making uncontrolled remarks. Mado Han kept complaining about fertilizer, making Jolene furious, not understanding why she liked this goofball. Chrome asked when Mado Han would return to Azami, but feeling embarrassed about what he had done, he just wanted to settle here. Plus, Mado Han really liked this place and the agricultural management job here. Celine immediately greeted Loi's family and pulled out a marriage certificate to lure them into signing, but the plan wasn't completed because a strange sound rang out. It turned out a flying lizard came here to cause trouble, and AK threatened to roast it to charcoal. Jiho thought it was a super rare monster that could be sold for a lot of money, so volunteered to go into battle, but unexpectedly, it was a terror dragon, causing the girl to run away in panic. The kids saw this and used paper airplanes to lightly knock off the dragon's horn. Just a few hits, and the dragon was defeated, spinning away. Celine mocked Jiho, but then got shocked when the marriage certificate became the kid's toy. At mealtime, Jiho teased Celine, but since it was in front of her future in-laws, she had to behave herself. Loi's grandfather apologized to Philo for the limited time, so only a few basic moves were taught. What he called basic was enough to make Philo want to go into depression. Then AK said this was the wedding celebration party for her and Loi, making the sisters show their attitude. Even the grandfather said that since Loi became a soldier and brought friends to visit the village, today no one would leave without getting drunk. Everyone praised the food, so Mitho Han boasted that it was made from the basilisk. Philo felt like sinking into depression. Then AK spoke up that this was a wedding celebration party for her and Loi, but the sisters showed their displeasure. Grandpa said since Loi became a soldier and brought friends to visit the village, no one would leave sober today. Everyone raved about how delicious it was, so Mitho Han bragged that it was made from a basilisk. He caught that morning. Jiho and Selen knew the sauce was made from squid ink and nearly vomited. The grand finale was a delicious human-faced salad, inviting everyone to try it even though it was all made from monsters. Yet everyone enjoyed it thoroughly. After the meal, Jiho even voluntarily cleaned up, making Selen suspicious that she had some plan. Hilskin Jiho really is a good wife and daughter-in-law despite being money-hungry. But being able to do so many things is definitely commendable. Before the elders left, they asked Loi who his girlfriend was among the harem. The young man explained they were just classmates from the same school. Jiho caught the eye of the brown-haired lady because she was very capable and caring towards others. The grandfather found Philo very pleasing because her skills weren't bad at all. Meanwhile, Celine and Jiho were upset, but Philo was extremely triumphant for being chosen by the grandfather. AK Chow yelled at everyone to quickly go home. Celine, angry and venting, demanded Visitosa come up with a clever plan for her. The uncle suggested Celine use the belt to speak or transform into a magical girl to befriend the kids. Hugh Stinker overheard and kindly created a new form for Visitosa, but it was harshly criticized by him. Then Hugh confided in AK about wanting to liberate the Demon King for himself. However, that was just speculation, so AK couldn't take the next step yet. More importantly, Visitosa was about to remember everything, making Hugh worried about what that guy might do. Late at night, Celine and Philo kept teasing Jiho about being gifted a new outfit. When Jiho learned the dress was high-end, she immediately had a bright idea. Meaning took it off and put it away in the closet to sell later for a high price. Suddenly, Loi brought tea and cakes to everyone and happened to see this scene. Philo quickly kicked the young man towards the mountain and called Daiho back to prevent him from falling and losing limbs again. On this side, Mitho Han was apologizing to Ma Di for the things he had caused. Suddenly, Ma Di found the scene familiar and told the young man to stand up. She wanted to know how Mitho Han was controlled by the Demon King. So he recounted that a strange merchant once approached him, giving him an egg, and somehow he handed it over to the king. After inhaling that thing, the king seemed to be controlled by an AI. Mitho Han guessed the man was about 60 years old and kept asking him Do you see me as AI Mozzie suddenly realized he had heard that line somewhere before? Early in the morning, VJ forced AK to restore his body because when VJ disappeared, AK would lose his power, and even the last dungeon seal would vanish. AK remained indifferent, making VJ extremely angry, but unable to do anything. Hugh noticed Loy and Jiho avoiding each other and guessed something had happened between them. They both denied it in unison, which made the wives even more jealous and annoyed. Soon enough, the group arrived at the last dungeon, also known as the Ultimate Prison. Jiho was excited to hunt treasures inside, but hold on, inside there were only demon lords. Hugh enlightened Jiho that the dungeon they had been to was just a disguise created by dwarves to hide the last dungeon. Even the mission to eliminate the demon lords escaping from there was the duty of Kanzen village. Loy was shy because he had never defeated any monster, let alone a demon lord. This made the other two feel something was off. VZ was not only Kanjan's guardian beast, but also AK's, since she could transfer all damage to VZ and use its immortal strength. Jiho asked what exactly the ultimate prison was, so Hugh explained, but nobody really understood. In short, it's a place with terrifying magic and ancient runic script of world-class power. Hugh said that even with explanation, people wouldn't have enough knowledge to understand. Mozzie scolded little AK for daring to take it from VJ, making everything more complicated. AK said Hugh manipulated her into taking it from VJ as an apron because it was oil and water resistant. Hugh temporarily set that aside to focus on AK's inability to control her current power. If this unstable state isn't locked down, soon all demon lords will be released into this world. Hugh knew everyone had drawn their holy swords and told them to take good care of them. This guy suddenly gave a sly smile that made Jiho feel something was really weird. Hugh took the belt from Zilen, making her cry her eyes out as she parted with him. Then Hugh began the resurrection ritual for VJ. First he took pork belly, smashed it tender, then wrapped it with the belt and put it into the pan to fry. While letting the meat rest, Hugh manipulated her into making an apron from VJ's stuff because it resisted oil and water well. Hugh temporarily set aside that matter to focus on AK's uncontrollable current power. If they didn't lock down this unstable state soon, all the demon lords would be unleashed into this world. Hugh knew everyone had drawn their holy swords, so he told them to take good care of them. He suddenly gave a sly grin that made Jiho feel something was very off. Hugh took a belt from Zilen, making her cry her eyes out when they had to part ways. Then Hugh started the resurrection ritual for VJ. First he took pork belly, pounded it tender, then wrapped it with the belt and put it in a pan to fry. While letting the meat rest, Hugh moved on to prepare the sauce, a familiar recipe, making Jiho realize this was how to make char siu pork. Hugh told her to stay calm, then put the meat into a sphere, next threw it into the sauce pot, and simmered it for 3 hours. After the time was up, Hugh quickly took it out and flicked AK's forehead, making her feel sharp pain. Hugh said that meant AK was cut off from the last dungeon connection and now was basically a normal human. Hearing that everyone kept teasing AK after all the months she'd been bullied by old lady Lolly, Mozzie wanted to unload all his grievances on AK, but the pressure from the master made Mozzie too scared and nervous to do so. Hugh told the group to move down the mountain to watch the match hosted by the royal family. Loy was very excited to watch Alan compete while Chrome had to return to prepare the stadium. While waiting for VJ to revive, Hugh had some free time, so he planned to go watch. Before leaving, Hugh said he had something important to discuss privately with AK. However, once inside the forest, Hugh suddenly triggered a trap, causing AK to fall into a deep pit. It turned out the so-called VZ power resurrection was actually sealing AK's power to release the last dungeon and unleash the Demon King. Hugh declared he would reform this world because he was very confident in his plan. As AK started suspecting Hugh's intentions, he immediately closed the pit's lid, trapping her inside. Celine and Philo were reluctant to leave as they still dreamed of becoming Loy's daughters-in-law. Hugh then approached the group and lied that AK was still busy collecting weapons to prepare for the Magi's attack. Hearing this, she panicked and ran away in fear. Hugh told everyone to head back first while he stayed behind to talk with Loy, then go there. As Loy just arrived, Hugh asked him to find AK because he feared she might have fallen somewhere. Taking advantage of this, Hugh followed the others out when suddenly Jolene remembered she hadn't said goodbye to her crush and the young man unexpectedly appeared. Hugh thought the other villagers had come too, but Methohan said he was alone. Methohan came to bring Magi some vegetables he'd just picked. However, the gate had already closed, so Methohan couldn't return. Hugh said it would be easier without AK tagging along, so he tricked AK into staying with Celine and Philo. It was heartbreaking to hear, so Hugh reassured them they'd only be apart for one day. Jolene eagerly pulled her crush back to Azami to relax while she left other tasks to Cromlo. The whole group returned to Azami smoothly, just as Hugh had planned. He knew Jiho intended to sell the glove made of Mithrin and wanted to buy it at a reasonable price. Hugh even offered to fix Jiho's prosthetic arm for free, but she refused. She was somewhat surprised that the young man could tell her current condition just by looking. After selling the treasure, Jiho easily earned a box full of gold coins. Next was the pantsu, made from spider silk, but selling it was quite difficult. Mina happened to witness this, and the two shared a heartfelt conversation about youth gossiping until Mina accidentally ate all the skewers meant for patients and had to buy more. Afterward, they visited Dao and learned she was preparing to publish a book with very scandalous content like instructions on bribing to sway superiors to your side. Mena noticed Dao's wounds had healed, but her character was beyond saving. Jiho asked who had convinced Dao to take the holy sword, but unfortunately she hadn't seen his face, only knew he was a man who always asked others who he was. Also behind him was some kid making noises like sucking candy. Jiho immediately thought of Hugh and had a bad feeling. When Jiho arrived at the arena, Cromlo assigned him to keep watch around because soon the kings of two countries would visit. Since Lena was busy with her romantic interests, Mina was also forced to come along. Cromlo was guarding the king while Jiho told everyone to enjoy themselves. With that, Celine sent 1,000 loving messages to Loy. Meanwhile, Alan was trying to sneak out of the arena because the match was too stressful, plus he'd been labeled a hero, making everyone stare at him whenever he went out. While Alan was miserable, the neighboring king arrived along with Sohu and Loy's brother. From Mithrin, wanting to buy it at a reasonable price. Hugh even offered to fix Jiho's fake arm for free, but she declined. She was a bit surprised the guy could tell her current condition just by looking. After selling the treasure, Jiho easily earned a full box of gold. Next was the pantsu, made from spider silk, but selling it was quite tough. Mina happened to catch this scene, and they both went off to share youthful secrets and gossip. Mina accidentally ate all the grilled skewers meant for patients, so she had to buy more. After that, they visited Dao and learned she was preparing to publish a book, the content of which was quite scandalous, like instructions on how to bribe to sway your superiors to your side. Mina saw Dao's wounds had healed, but her character was beyond saving. Jiho asked who convinced Dao to take the holy sword, but unfortunately, such as instructing everyone on how to bribe to manipulate their superiors to join their side. Mena saw that Dao's wound had healed, but his character, no chance of saving that. Jiho asked who told Dao to take the holy sword, but sadly, she never saw his face, only knowing he was the man always asking others if they recognized him. Also, behind him was a kid who always made noises like he was sucking on candy. Jiho immediately thought of Hugh and had a bad feeling. As Jiho arrived at the arena, Cromlo assigned him to keep watch, because soon the kings of both countries would come for a tour. Since Lena was busy impressing the guys, Mina got caught up too. Cromlo was protecting the king. Jiho told everyone to make the most of it and enjoy themselves. So Selin immediately sent 1,000 loving thoughts to Loy. Meanwhile, Alan was trying to sneak out of the arena because the match was too stressful for him, and on top of that, Alan had been given the title of hero, making everyone stare at him whenever he went out. While Alan was suffering, the neighboring king, along with Sohu and Loy's older brother, all showed up here. So when King Azami arrived, Jiho explained the current dangerous situation and asked him to stop the match. The king asked Cromlo if their words were trustworthy, and Cromlo said they were close friends of the princess. Hearing this, the old man pulled Jiho inside to have tea and chat about recent happenings in Magi. When AK was desperate, thinking no one would find his location, Loy appeared like a godsend. The young man said he had spent the whole day trekking through forests and rivers, searching for AK everywhere. He suddenly remembered falling into holes as a child, which led him here to find AK. This was also the place where Loy once vowed to become stronger because he didn't want anyone to worry. From now on, Loy will stand up to protect everyone, even though he still has a lot to work on. AK thanks Loy for helping her realize that so from now on, she's determined to fight alongside Loy to save this world. That night, Sohu asked Hugh about the plan, and he said he had already destroyed the gate to the zone, so everyone was confident everything would go smoothly. Hugh would handle the strategy while Soma would take care of the combat side for the team. The young man told him not to worry. The only problem was Makona, who hadn't recovered emotionally since Loy defeated her. Sohu said it was fine because he believed she would obey any order from him. Hugh saw that everything was settled and they were ready for tomorrow's battle. Loy was informed by Back Prado that the gate to Azami had been destroyed by Hugh, but luckily AK still had a way to get there. However, they needed to return to the village first. After preparing in the village, AK reminded Loy to follow her instructions upon arriving at Azami. Thanks to the elder's help, Loy found a way back using the village of Kanzan's unique Bin Duong vehicle. The next day, the friendly match between the two kingdoms went on as planned. During the fight, Alan suddenly realized his opponent was none other than Makona. Powered by Chen's strength, she easily cornered Alan and injured him. The king immediately questioned Sohu, who calmly suggested they join forces to conquer this world. Currently, Tokoku holds the technique to turn humans into powerful, obedient weapons. With Azami's power added, controlling the world would be just When Ryan and Chom tried to intervene, Soma used a trick to immobilize them. The king, once possessed by the demon lord, Abaddon, which caused suffering for his people and daughter, firmly rejected Soma's proposal. So Hio had no choice but to act, but by then everyone was already surrounding him. Jiho knew Hio wanted to seize the holy sword and free the last dungeon, so he isolated Loi and AK in the village to ensure everything went smoothly. Hugh said ordinary people like them couldn't change anything. Celine knew she didn't have overpowering strength like Loi, but she always tried to be a useful teammate. Everyone insisted they weren't easy targets either. This annoyed Hugh, who then summoned a swarm of Abaddon's locusts to surround the stands. He used the civilians as hostages to threaten the king, but unexpectedly, they were all soldiers and disguised adventurers. They immediately rose to fight, impressing Soma with their vigilance. Metho Han heard that Soma left the village, so he advised his friend to return to farming. The young man even wanted to teach Soma the wonders of farming with a wild transformation show. Metho Han brought the A Damas sickle and the rebellious destiny scroll to challenge Soma. Metho Han said, rural life wasn't boring, but what Soma hated was this world. The young man didn't want Loi to feel the same, so he found a way to make him believe the outside world was interesting. Then step by step, he helped Loi become a hero and pushed this world to the brink. Soma judged Metho Han had some skill, but unfortunately, it was nothing compared to him. Meanwhile, Mozzie's group struggled to fend off monsters when Makona tried to flirt with Mozzie, so Philo gave her a kick that pinned her to the wall. Chrome and Cholin had already been defeated, so Soma forced the king to bring the Elder to the Holy Sword. Alan suddenly ran over to gently ask Soma to loosen his grip, but it unexpectedly sealed itself back, taking them back to ancient times when humanity was in chaos and desperately longed for someone to appear and save them. So AK used the runic script to create Soma. He was supposed to disappear after the world was saved, but somehow Soma still existed, so people called him the hero. However, after a while, they forgot about him to be free, so he had to find a way to erase AK and make someone else the chosen hero, none other than Loi. Just as he mentioned this, the young man appeared and wondered if Alan's match had happened yet. Loi said he'd heard AK tell the whole story and questioned Hugh about why he couldn't resurrect. In this chaotic era, people longed for someone to appear and save them, so AK used runic script to create Soma. He was supposed to disappear when the world was saved, but for some reason Soma still existed, so people called him the hero. However, after a while, they forgot about him because they wanted to be free. So he had to find a way to erase AK and make someone else the chosen hero. And that person was none other than Loi. Just then, the young man appeared and asked if Alan's match had already happened. Loi said he heard AK tell the whole story and questioned Hugh about why he couldn't resurrect VJ. Hugh said the truth was he didn't want to resurrect VJ to avoid the Demon King wreaking havoc on the world. But the kid didn't believe him and thought Hugh was lying, so this guy also showed respect to Loi. Mozzie knew Loi was blind, so he made up a story that Hugh brought many eggs here, causing bugs to fly around and disturb Alan's match. Loi remembered AK telling him to smash the egg containing VJ, so he asked Hugh to surrender it. As soon as this guy brings it out, Loi throws a rock at him. However, Hugh anticipated the worst and immediately brought out his trump card. The giant golem quickly absorbs Makona to boost its power. Mozzie begged Loi to save Makona, so he risked a one-on-one solo fight with it. Loi easily smashed one of the golem's arms, but it instantly regenerated at an insane speed. Hugh was excitedly controlling the golem, unaware that Celine was sneaking up behind him. No matter how many times Loi defeated the golem, it always recovered. It then launched a lightning-fast light attack, but Loi dodged. Loi planned to counterattack, but since Makona was captured, he couldn't make a move. Hesitating, the young man was knocked back by the golem, making everyone anxious. Mozzie guessed the golem was using Makona as a core to regenerate, so separating her would weaken its power, but no one could get close, and Makona had lost control of her consciousness. At this point, Loi was battered so badly by the golem he had no strength left to fight. Suddenly, Metho Han appeared and revived Loi's will with the power of his love for farming and fish raising, knocking the giant golem back. Jiho and Mozzie kept running after Makona, trying to wake her up. Seeing Metho Han's relentless fight reminded Loi of his dream to become a strong protector of everyone. Jiho also tried to wake Makona by promising to give her Mozzie's pantsu. Sure enough, Makona regained consciousness, escaped the golem, and flew to snatch Cruz's underwear while Hugh was furious about the failed plan. Celine quickly snatched the egg from him, calling out VJ's name nonstop, demanding him to break free right now. Seeing VJ still silent, Salen's mouth twitched as she rambled until she couldn't wait for the cooldown and had to be quiet. VJ had no choice but to use all his strength to escape, surprising Hugh as well. Celine was proud of herself for taming VJ so perfectly. At the same time, Loi returned stronger than ever. The young man used wind magic to blow the golem away, turning it into a pile of rubble. Hugh immediately sent an SOS signal to his two teammates, but somehow they were still filming Loy. So Hugh was extremely happy that Loy became the successor to his hero position. Hugh remembered those two just wanted to make Loy a hero, and now their plan succeeded. At this moment, AK appeared from the sky and mocked Hugh, telling him to surrender. Unfortunately, Hugh was stubborn and refused, so AK had no choice but to use full power to stop him. Unexpectedly, Soma managed to get Hugh away from AK, so Hugh said he needed time, edited Loy's battle scene, and told him not to forget his evil crimes. Whether by talent or luck, Alan once again became a hero in the king's eyes. Through this, Methohan was also reinstated, though the young Jasmine guy still did his usual antics, always driving Line crazy. Makona was enjoying the magical underwear, which wasn't Mozzie's, as Jiho had said. Loy returned to his ordinary life with his reluctant harem. AK always wanted to get close to Loy, but Celine wouldn't allow old lady Lolly to do that. Just when it seemed the harem's internal war would break out, Mozzie and Jiho stopped the two Spider Girls. Alan and Philo also arrived, gathering at Mozzie's house to join the party, all happily enjoying a meal to stop him. Unexpectedly, Soma managed to get Hughes away from AK, so Yu said he needed time, edited Loy's battle scene, and told him not to forget the evil crimes of that man. With a bit of luck, Alan once again became a hero in the king's eyes. Through that, Methohan was reinstated, but young Mr. Jasmine still kept causing trouble, driving Leni crazy. Makona was enjoying the magical panties that weren't Mozzie's, as Jiho had said. Loy returned to his usual life with his reluctant harem. AK always wanted to be close to Loy, but Celine wouldn't allow old lady Lolly to do that. One would expect an intense harem civil war, but Mozzie and Jiho stopped the two spiders. Alan and Philo also just arrived, gathering at Mozzie's house to join the party. Everyone happily enjoyed the meal after a hard-fought battle. So this episode ends here. Goodbye, and see you all in the next videos.